Well, now to our ongoing Doors Open series. This week, our reporter Aisling Riordan went along to Wheatfield Prison in Clondalkin in Dublin. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to be speaking to Liam Herrick of the Penal Reform Trust about the current state of Ireland's prisons. But first of all, let's take a look at Aisling's report.
I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps
barbed wire, locked doors and long corridors. These are all things you associate with prison. But at Wheatfield, there's a lot more to it. With over 500 prisoners being held there on any given day, it's a well-run operation.
Now I'm here with Governor Pat Kavanagh, and he has been governor for the last year and a half. You're going to give me a bit of a tour.
Yeah, absolutely. You're in Wheatfield Prison now. The prison was opened in 1989 and it was opened initially as a walk training prison. Okay.
So where are we heading down to now?
Okay, we're on to one of our standard units in Wheatfield. We have 16 cells that we generally have up to 32 prisoners on. However, we are moving towards single cell accommodation, so we would hope to have 16 on the unit, so it would be single cells. We have one open here if you want to go in.
Have a look in, okay.
Okay. Okay, this is a standard cell in Wheatfield. As you can see, it's very tight. Key things for any prisoner is toilet facilities, which are a huge bonus. TVs. TVs are huge. They came in a number of years ago, and the reason they came in was as a recommendation from a group that were looking at self-harm and suicide within the prison. When they came in as a serving prison officer, I have to say staff were kind of a bit surprised to see a TV coming in. It was a long time ago, and it almost looked like, my God, where is the service going? It's getting very soft. The reality is this was probably one of the best things that ever happened within the service. The number of incidents of self-harm and certainly death by suicide seriously dropped. And I know people on the outside might look and they might think, oh, isn't it, geez, haven't they a great life? But the reality is, if you're locked into a room, and if I close the door over, maybe, I won't close it all the way, close it over and just get a sense of how tight and how small this cell is. You do need something to occupy your mind. And if you are an individual who has reading and writing difficulties, that now cuts down the option for you to actually pass the time. So the TV is literally a potential lifesaver.
Prisoners are free to learn new skills like bricklaying and carpentry.
My name is Michael, I'm 35, I'm doing a 6-year sentence. I'm currently here in Wheatfield Prison. We're in the workshop down here, and you learn plastering here, you learn building, bricklaying, precasting, anything to do with ornaments or for gardens, or every type of building can be done. You learn it here in this shop. This is where you learn it. I'm using the sentence to learn, I've learned a lot since I came here.
The highs and lows of being in prison.
Well, some days you feel good in prison, and more days it's when you get the visits and stuff and your family come and see you and then they're leaving and your kids. That's the hard bit about prison, But other than that, as I said, we come to workshop here every day. It's good for the brain and good for the head,
And there's also a big emphasis placed on doing things for charity. Chris is 25 years old and is also serving a 6-year prison sentence.
Do a lot of stuff in here for charity. Rocking horses, garden furniture, dog kennels, stuff like that. Well, you get up at 8 for your breakfast, then you go to work from 9 to 12, then you come back for your dinner, then 2 o'clock you're back from work from 2 to 4, and you're back in your cell then from 4 to half 5, then that's recreation time then, go to the yard, gym.
Some people might say that you should be locked up all day long. What would you say to that?
No, so we're locked up 18 hours a day, that's long enough, You only get 4 hours a day to come down and do a bit of work.
Now, Wheatfield has probably been the most talked about prison in recent days because of a special calendar the prison officers are putting together for the Irish Cancer Society.
I suppose it came through the idea because a couple of the staff here in Wheatfield have been affected and are currently going through treatment for cancer, so we want to show our support to them, but also a couple of staff have passed away throughout the Irish Prison Service, obviously in the last few years. At the minute, we only released a few photos there on Friday and it's just blown up now at the minute, so we're very happy with the way it's going, the reaction from the public.
Are you worried about the slagging you're going to get from the prisoners?
No, not really, because some of their families have been affected by cancer as well, so they know that we're only doing it for a good cause and we're doing it as a bit of crack, so we've got a bit of slagging, but it's all harmless fun at the end of the day.
You'll be happy to know the calendar goes on sale later this year, and I've a sneaking suspicion maybe the prison officers will be seen in a different light.
And that report from Aisling Riordan. Well, now I am joined by Liam Herrick from the Penal Reform Trust. I mean, you'd have to say fair play to the prison officers getting involved in charity drives like that. But if we look at the wider issues around prisons in Ireland, Wheatfield, you were telling me there, was originally built for just 200 prisoners. It's up to 700 now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're coming off the back of a period of kind of dealing with crisis in the prison system. It's a good time to step back and look at the development of the system. But when Wheatfield was built in 1989, as Governor Kavanagh said there, the idea at that stage is you'd have a designated prison for about 200, 250 young adults in small units, single cells, eating in communal settings, a normal type of environment, because at that stage there was an understanding that those types of prisons have much better outcomes, that you don't have the harmful effects of long-term incarceration, locking people up for 20 hours a day without meaningful activity and so on. But of course that potential was never fulfilled because it was part of the crisis of overcrowding that's affected the system for the last 20, 25 years. Yeah,
the prison population has really dramatically increased, up to a peak in 2011, but it's on the turn now, is it?
It's steadying up now. You were talking about in the 1990s, the prison population being in the mid-2000s, then peaking at 4,600 in 2011.
So that must have had a huge effect on prisons, doubling the number of inmates.
And the dominant feature of the prison system was just chronic overcrowding all the time. More and more places being built and then being filled as quickly as they were being built. That we had deliberate and at sometimes unconscious policy of just locking up more and more people for longer over that period with poorer and poorer results. And the prison system really has always struggled to cope with this crisis and is now beginning to have the capacity to deal with it a little bit better.
Peaked at 4,700, you said there. What's it at now?
It's about 4,100 in custody at the moment. So in the last 2 years...
It's going down, but it's still high.
It's still high, and it's still over the capacity of what the prison system is. See, the capacity of a prison system isn't just about the number of beds that it has. The Inspector of Prisons has been very clear. You need to have meaningful activity for people in the prison. So there's no point in having a large capacity prison that can maybe take 500 or 600 people if you only have activities for 200 or 300 of those. Now, Wheatfield as a prison now today, at its peak, had as many as 700 in it. It is somewhat less at the moment. But as was outlined there, single cells are now doubled up with bunk beds in them. There isn't enough meaningful activity for everybody across the system. And for most prisoners, they're locked in their cells from 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening till 8 o'clock in the morning, and also for their meals during the day. They might get out for classes or work, but for most of the time, they're spending it in the cell, usually with somebody else.
So what, 20 hours a day, we heard?
No, but 20 would be for people who are on protection and so on. But I suppose the ordinary regime would be let out at 8 o'clock in the morning for your meal. You come back to your cell to eat your meal. You're let out to class for a couple of hours. Then you're also back in your cell for your lunch. You're out in the evening for a couple of hours, back in your cell for your evening meal, and then you're in your cell for 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening till the following morning.
You would have to say, I mean, looking at Aisling's reports, and also, I mean, you were saying that Mountjoy, that slapping out is a thing of the past, or very nearly a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of progress has been made.
In the last few years, we're seeing progress. As the numbers have come down, it gives the space to start dealing with the problems in the system. The most acute problems, I suppose, have been poor conditions, and we see Mountjoy now being renovated, plans to renovate Cork and Limerick. We also see the problem about young offenders who were in St. Patrick's and all of the problems we knew that were in that institution. St. Patrick's will be closed probably
they've
in the next
started building in Oberstown, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, just last week. And we expect that St. Pat's will be closed by the end of this year.
Can I ask you, I mean, it seems that the people who end up in prison, they're a population that have had a lot of hardship in life. They would come from impoverished backgrounds, that have drug addiction issues. I mean, obviously, they've also committed crimes that cause them to be incarcerated. Do you think our current prison system is tackling any of these problems, or is it just holding people for a period of time?
Well, I think one of the things the prison service would say consistently is you can't expect them to solve some of the underlying problems. It is not reasonable to expect the prison service to deal with the problem of mental health in society. And we have under-resourced mental health for decades. And increasingly, we're seeing many of those people appearing in the prison system. Prison is not a therapeutic environment, and it's a major problem they've had to deal with. We see this in some particular populations, for example, young adult men, which there's a really high rate of mental health difficulties in the prison system, and women, where we have about 150 women in prison. And whereas the number of men has been dropping off, the number of women has continued to climb. And a significant portion of them are women with issues to do with addiction, homelessness and mental health. They're not getting the services they need in the community. And the prison service is asked to pick up the pieces later on. So, you know, solving problems in prisons also looks at these issues as well, particularly mental health and homeless issues.
Right, so progress has been made, but a lot more to be done, really, within the sector.
At the moment, we're at the stage of a turning point, hopefully, where we can start to move away from large prisons like Wheatfield and have more progressive prisons into the future. We're at an optimistic moment, but it will need resources and investment.
OK, well, Liam, thank you very much indeed for coming into us this morning.